All right, here we are with episode 9 of AWC TV with one of our favorite referees, Brent Lamer. Is here to actually, we'll change up a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the rule changes and really some of the best practices with dealing with a referee, especially at a youth tournament. Everybody knows Brent from wrestling tournaments, but I don't know that everybody knows your history. How long have you been involved in wrestling?
Almost 20 years. I started, I'm 31. I started when I was in 7th grade with Houston Middle program. Actually, I call him Coach Pfeiffer, the official. He was my middle school coach. We had a heck of a middle school program and team. And so I started with him, then from middle school, I went to Christian Brothers for 2 years. And then I transferred and went and graduated from St. Benedict and kind of helped build a really good program over there, and graduated in 2007. Kind of helped coach my younger brother, his all 4 years of his high school career. He was a Brute National runner-up, a state finalist. He got second his senior year, placed sophomore, junior, and senior year. And then once he graduated and went off to college to wrestle, I decided to get on the dark side of things and become an official. I think this will be my 6th year. So it's just something I love. It's a passion that I have to officiate. As crazy as that sounds sometimes.
You officiate lacrosse too as well?
Yeah, so I do girls lacrosse. I'm about to be a women's college official for girls lacrosse, wrestling, getting into baseball, volleyball, adult softball. So it goes from one season to another, except right now when I've got more time than I know what to do with.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot. So how do you keep up with it all?
Sometimes it's hard, especially when seasons overlap. Like my girls lacrosse goes into it kind of runs with my adult softball, so I'll do 1 or 2 girls lacrosse games, and then I'll go jump on a softball field till about 10:30 at night. So it's pretty much a daily routine to be on a field and then to drive somewhere around town to officiate a adult softball game. But wrestling season's kind of nice because I do a little bit of basketball, but I focus mainly on wrestling. But it's just, I love officiating, even when we're getting yelled at sometimes.
You getting yelled at?
Every once in a while.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of the conversation, right? So, sometime, I guess it was probably about December or so, I started challenging you and Tom. After looking at some of the newer coaches from around our area, it's great to see new coaches and new people getting involved. I saw the challenges and the interactions that some of them got ugly. I thought it was very important for you guys to, hey, let's give some training, or how do we communicate to new coaches, parents helping out. Hey, here's how you should approach. Here's what's approachable. But I liked your approach. Let's start off with what are some of the new rules and what does that mean to us?
Okay. So I kind of wrote a little list of different things I knew we'd be talking about. So this year, there's a couple. A lot of people don't know. Doesn't really affect the youth as much as it does the high school, but I'll just go over. So there used to be a hair rule where it was mandatory that if you had, your hair had to be a certain length, otherwise you had to have some type of hair thing. Well, then like 3 years ago, they came out and it had to be attached. So if you had long hair, you had to buy this certain type of headgear that was manufactured a certain way. And then last year or 2 years ago, they changed it. They changed it again. And last year, a lot of people don't know, but out of all the states, they all were going to a certain hair rule. Well, Tennessee was the only state that was really essentially the guinea pig. So last year, Tennessee, we didn't have a hair rule. And so with the information and I guess the results that officials and coaches had at the end of the season, the NFHS new guideline is there is no hair rule. But with that, your hair can be as long as you want it, but we won't stop the match because you're delaying wrestling, positive, good wrestling. With that, if we do stop it or if a wrestler needs us to stop it for whatever, then essentially you'll be hit for a stall call because you're stopping the action of the match. And that kind of goes along with the rule that I believe went in last year with the shoelaces. And part of that, if you're on Flow, you've probably seen it. It was a big deal a year or two ago when I think it was the Ironman. I could be wrong. But two top athletes were going at it in like a rival match for a championship and ripped kid's shoe off. And I think that's kind of where it started. But now if the shoelaces are untied, it's a stall call. They're supposed to have them taped or tucked, and that goes back for a hot minute. And so that's a rule that, from the beginning of last year, I'm kind of a stickler, especially with the high school kids. Just tape them up. I mean, it's not that hard. So kind of at the beginning of the season with some of the rules, you kind of be a little bit lenient. Hey, this is what they're going to, just do it from the beginning. And by the end of the season, majority, we didn't have, any issues or, that I can remember. So
Kind of got to have tape in the budget now.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I remember I had the same. I wish I could find a pair of the Adidas shoes I had because mine were zipper and they were the most comfortable. I felt like I was on clouds all the time, just because of how comfortable. But they were zip up, so I never had to tape my shoes because they were always, zipped up. But those are two of, I guess, some of the new things. Also, there's two more new rules. One of them, I'll be honest, I kind of disagree with the wording of it. And that has to do with fleeing the mat. So, and this again goes up to, I guess, your higher middle school. Seeing two kids that are, we know they're at that 7th, 8th grade level, high caliber, kids. But you got kids that, run around even at the high school level. And so fleeing the mat's kind of a big issue, but they've changed it to this year. The wordage is pretty much if the guy who's on, you have the defensive wrestler, he's going to flee the mat. But the guy who's trying to score, if he scores a takedown or a near fall, whatever, you're just going to give him the points that he earned from that takedown, but you're not going to give him a fleeing the mat, penalty point, which I don't really understand why that is, because I mean, to me, you should still reward that, that guy who's trying to wrestle, So it'd be interesting. Of course, that's how it is this year. It'll be interesting to see if they change it next year. But fleeing the mat, I mean, it's hard to see. Sometimes it's blatant. I mean, kids are just running around, even at the high school level. I'm like, what's going on here? The other thing is wrestling injury. This is probably going to be a questionable one for a lot of people. And the way that they are going about a wrestling injury is pretty much if, again, kind of like fleeing, but unfortunately you have kids, and we see it a lot in especially football, college and pro, is kids will fake an injury, as bad as that sounds, because they may be getting scored on. If you watch college, kind of what my opinion DeSanto did in the RBY match when he was getting dominated by RBY and said he was hurt. So kind of if you saw that video, so if there is action wrestling going on, and if the opponent would have scored, takedown or near fall would have, but there was injury time that essentially the other wrestler calls, whatever it is, it's in the judgment of the official that you will still award those points as if the injury wouldn't have happened, been called. And I kind of like that because, things do happen, but it also, again, tries to keep people honest, so I can definitely see, and I think a lot of these rule changes come from probably, my guess would be your big tournaments that we see on Flow, your Ironman, the Powerade, big time stuff that things happen, like the shoe being ripped off the guy's foot, different things go into, I think, rules over a certain, period of time. Hey, these need to be addressed. So that the injury will be one that I can see, coaches, kind of getting in an uproar about. But again, that's a judge.
Before.
Say that again.
I've used that one before and gotten burned by that one before.
I mean, it's you as an official, you're not going to be right all the time. I mean, Plain and simple. I wish I was right 100% of the time. Any official that says they are, I mean, I'm just being honest. There's something wrong. But it's a judgment, and, sometimes you can see, man, that kid's shoulder just popped out or whatever it is, or, that's all we have potentially dangerous. But then sometimes I'm, me personally, I'm like, I didn't see anything. I don't know why why he was hollering, why he called it. So that kind of goes into effect of why this new injury rule, I think, was put into place, is to, really keep people honest.
So it's a injury or potentially dangerous too, isn't it?
Yes. So, and I think it kind of goes more towards the kid, the wrestlers, calling an injury timeout, especially if we don't, if we just see live action and it's kind of, oh, this kid's, screaming injury time. Well, was there any points that were, leading up, that could have led up to, that kid getting a takedown and injury time right away, and then you wave off a takedown? That's the kind of, you're kind of putting that offensive guy in a bad position, so those are kind of the I guess pinpoints for this upcoming year for new rule changes.
Yeah, last one is, like I said, we got hit with that for back points, right? So you continue the count, and then you award one additional point. We always call it, I guess, the mercy rule or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten hit with that. We've been on the downside of that a couple times, as well as the other side of that.
Yeah, and that's one, I'll say, I mean, it does happen where you've got to call that injury time. And but personally, it's not as often that you see, especially in that near fall, that you see somebody. I mean, most of the time, if a kid is hurting, whether he can't breathe or whatever, most of the time he's probably going to give himself up and give up the pen,
Yeah.
because he's, yeah. And it's kind of where I see, I mean, it does happen, but not as often as I think most people would think.
Gotcha. So what is the most common thing that you guys hear disputed? What do you get called to the table to the most?
So I wrote down a few things that I could think of. Locked hands call. We get, asked, locked hands call, takedown, whether they think it was a takedown or not a takedown. Of course, near fall. Did you have near fall, mainly, did you have enough to get a 2 count? And me personally, that's why I try to be in any of the calls that I make. I try to be as verbal as possible and loud, whether it's a takedown or near fall reversal. One for myself, it's kind of a reminder for myself, but hopefully the coaches and the table can also hear, because we got a lot of, great a lot of younger kids, mat girls, parents that have no clue how to score, even, in the stands, so that's kind of how, when I first started, I always wanted to try to be as verbal as possible to make sure people knew, know what kind of count or whatever the call was. And then every once in a while you get taken to the table over questionable, illegal slam, takedown, return to the mat kind of scenarios. But I think the biggest one is probably, lock hands. That's probably what I would think is probably the biggest one.
Are you questioned on, did you see it or why didn't you see it?
Kind of both. And that kind of runs into what we're going to talk about of how to approach an official.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good segue. I mean, that's probably the most common thing that, unless you're studying up and reading through all the different manuals, it's a lot of people don't really know. So what's the right way to challenge?
So I think the biggest thing that needs to be known is everything is judgment. When you get taken to the table, 2 things got to happen. There's got to be a change in the score or a rules application. If depending on the wording of how a coach asks a question, or sometimes coaches just want to lay into you, which it does happen, and I understand. You're supposed to be hit for unsportsmanlike conduct at all age groups. And I feel like that's where a lot of coaches / parents, because most of them are parents, especially at the, younger age groups, they don't understand that. And if we were being honest, I feel like there should be or could be a lot more unsportsmanlike hit on coaches because of how they approach. And that's what I was going to say is, I know you and I have talked, but my thing is for coaches and parents to stay calm when they want or feel the need to talk to an official. If you stay calm and collective, majority of the time, we're just going to have a few words, discuss what was going to happen, and that's it. But we've seen where that's not always the case, and we have some parents or coaches that, want to use foul language or tell us how they really feel about us. I try not to take it personal, because if I took everything I've ever been called and met in the parking lot, as crazy as that seems, I probably wouldn't, I wouldn't do it, just because it can be a headache. And that's where we see a lot of officials in all sports, especially that I do,
Yeah.
Getting out because of parents and how, they can be sometimes, parents, coaches, even kids, mouthing off. And I, it's, I try not to tolerate, any of that kind of stuff, just because it's just not good behavior, and you don't want your kids to, to see that. And I've had incidences, but, I don't take it personal. Some people come back and apologize, and, that's, I appreciate it. I'm not looking for an apology whenever you cuss me out. I mean, it happens. I'm a very competitive person. If you've ever seen me compete at something, I can get pretty hot and heavy sometimes. And so I have that in the back of my mind is, Brent, you're a competitor too. Like, how far are you going to let, this person go? But just, I think, overall, I think letting, the parents and especially, dads, because they're the ones that really help. You've got a few moms here and there that help, but just actually knowing the rules first, is a big thing. Because you've got some people that will,
Always got my book handy.
There you go. You're like Coach Jose Delgado, for those that have been around Memphis for a long time. He was the same way. But it goes back to judgment. And that the unsportsmanlike is, are you questioning my call, is pretty much what it was. Not, hey, did you see, if you say, hey, did you see this? Did you see this kid lock hands? No, I didn't. Otherwise I would have seen it. And that was one thing I wrote on my notes is, different angles, it's different scenarios in during a wrestling match. You have different scenarios. I can't, when a kid, is trying to take somebody down, he's already got control. They're up on their feet. He picks the kid up. I don't know if he's going frontwards, backwards, sideways. You see different things, and that's where there's like a reaction time per se, with the locked hands. But even with, hey, did you see the lock hands? From my view, I didn't see it. I mean, and, that's where I think the biggest thing is, because they want that point, which I don't blame them, but I can't award something that I did not see. So just different position and angles, go with the way, that we call things. And so I think, that's kind of one of the biggest things. But when it comes to approaching the table, if people are calm and collective, we can have a quick chat, about whatever you think happened, and then I'll, say what I thought happened or didn't happen. And then that's where, where it is, I'm trying to think. Let's see.
Yeah, I can't see lock. The only thing I think about locked hands is the one that I would challenge is if the bottom wrestler stands up, he's on both feet, and then takes a knee while the hands are clasped at the top from a body lock. That should actually be against the defensive man, right?
Yeah, and I'll say
I would challenge.
Yeah, and I remember when I wrestled that. I don't want to say we practice it, because we didn't practice it, but if it's a tight match, and you can't get away, it used to be where, you kind of go down, go to one knee and hope that guy's still locking hands. That's kind of, a lot of people have gone away from that. But, when you got kids that are, trying to scramble or whatever it is, when they're trying to hold on to that kid that's, trying to do a switch and he locks hands, well, depending on how fast those kids are, you may see them touch, you may not see, and they may have that switch going in front of the coaches, but where you are, where they had originally started the position, the official, can only go so far without, jumping on top and all that to try to get that. So there's a lot of things I think that, it's hard to be an official. I'll say that. It's,
Sure.
I love it. I hope, I'll do it. It's funny because I'm going to throw some of them underneath the bus, but, there's only probably
Only one
12.
guy.
Say what?
Only one guy.
There's probably 10 to 12 of us. So it's a small crew, but all of them pretty much have been officiating as long. They officiated me back when I started in middle school, so they've been around a hot second. And that's where where we need officials. It's
You see places at AAU kind of around the state, Clarksville, Nashville. They bring kids in, maybe kids out of high school to help out to start, the on-job training at the youth level. You don't see that here. What does it take for you guys to bring in some fresh perspective and some young blood to help really grow the referee base while the base of athletes is growing?
I think it's two ways. Part of it is us, but also a lot of it has to do with, I'll be honest, the generation of kids that are coming, graduating now, and they see sometimes what officials have to deal with. I don't know if I would have been ready at 18, 19 years old to be yelled at by some grown adults over there, that act crazy. But you see that in all sports. It's in all sports, it's a struggle to get kids right out of high school, because of just how, I can't say that it's not because the pay isn't good, because the pay, what we get paid is great. As much as I love getting paid, I don't do it for the money. I do it because I enjoy the sport. I remember when I was a bad little heathen in middle school, but to be an 18, 19-year-old, I think there's just so much out there that they see. And a lot of them don't stay in Memphis. A lot of them go to Knoxville or, go somewhere else. And more power, go wherever you get a scholarship for sure. But I think the biggest thing is just, they probably see all the stuff that, we deal with at times, and they don't want to be a part of that. And rightfully so. I can see it both ways. Part of me wishes I would have started officiating a long time, right out of high school. But then I'm like, man, I probably would have had some incidences in the parking lot for sure. I can't let somebody, talk crazy to me like that. But we definitely need, officials. I know, Arlington just graduated some kids this past year. It's a great sport. I wish more kids would look into officiating, but as even dads, I've got friends that tell me all the time, oh, I'll come out and officiate wrestling, and I tell them, I'm like, no, unless you officiated wrestling or wrestled in your life, you don't need to do it, because you got people's body limbs and everything, and they don't understand it. They just think you can go out there and stand there. I'm like, no, you have to know what moves that kid could be doing, 3 or 4 steps of the way. Otherwise, you're going to have some major injuries, and that's not what we want.
I think you guys did have one guy that came brand new off the street like that. I think he lasted one tournament. It didn't go very well for him.
Yeah, we try to let them know it's not for everybody. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I think just kind of recap what you said. It's really, you want people coming in and questioning rule changes, or what did you see? I mean, there's not much you can change if you didn't see the lock hands.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, what we call is what we call. If I called a takedown and, this is what you saw and this is what I saw. It's not like Major League Baseball where we can, or another sport, or even, college wrestling where there's a challenge and we can, go over that. It's, whatever the call is, that's what, unfortunately for whoever's challenging, that's the call. Whether it's the right one, hopefully it is, but the wrong one, like you can't go back and be like, oh, we're going to wrestle the past 30 seconds because it was a missed call. That just, fortunately, but unfortunately, it's wrestling and it's youth high school. We don't watch iPads and I have many people that tried to come up and have me watch a video of something and what I would have done. And
it's easy to just tag you on Facebook and show you.
Yeah. A lot of videos get sensitive.
I've seen that.
So, but yeah, I think, just knowing that when you go to the table or want to challenge anything, it's not really anything that can be overturned. But the biggest thing is, also I think probably actually the number one thing is we get taken to the table, not for us, but to get the score right for the match, which is very important. And that's why it's important that when we have these tournaments, and I'll say Arlington, all those kids that run those tables and the parents, we always have a good experience. When I've got an Arlington, thing pop up on my schedule, I'm like, click yes, because I know it's going to be ran great. I'm not going to have many issues, and that's important. But it's important for the match to know that the coaches, that the score is right. Because we know people are volunteers, and something may have happened. They may have not have clicked it now that it's on track and not on a book. When I grew up in a time where it was all pencil in a book.
You're talking to two guys that grew up a little before you.
Yeah. Like, do you know how to work this? I'm like, no, I'm old school. Just write it down.
Yeah. We try. I mean, it's, you go to tournaments, you can tell when it's just a fundraiser and you're going to do as little as possible to bring a profit. And there's others that want people coming back. And, those are typically the tournaments that end up being larger, have more people travel in. And that's kind of a tough market to be in with, nothing between us and Little Rock, and or one club between us and Little Rock, nothing in Mississippi, and the boot heel is still 2 hours away.
Yep.
We're running out of time on this session, so what I'll do is I think we'll hit pause here, and then we'll come back for part 2.
Okay.
That work? Cool.